But also as a youth, you don't understand consequences as well.
Thank you. Honestly, Rob, it's a pleasure to speak with you. This too shall pass is just what joy looks like on film. Uh,
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah.
honestly, speaking with Rob Grant, the director of This Too Shall Pass. Rob, tell me, where did the film come from? How did it come to be?
It came out of COVID actually. We were stuck in a bubble. The world was in chaos. I couldn't figure out how to make a movie. And my producer, or sorry, my agent at the time introduced me to one of the producers, Michael Baker, who was the real life Simon, who grew up in a Mormon household and ran away for a long weekend to chase a girl, and got into a bunch of trouble. And I said, I don't know if I'm the right person to write for this. I just finished doing a horror movie about three people trying to eat each other on a boat. But the more we spoke about it, it kind of just, I could find a lot of horror elements in the way teenagers treat their lives, whether it's social status, relationships. It's like, as long as I treated it with the same level of deadly serious moroseness when things go wrong, it kind of made more sense. I grew up Catholic, and have a lot of Catholic guilt, went to a public high school that kind of changed my whole worldview. And I kept seeing more and more of myself in the story. And then my dad, during the bubble, we were talking about regrets, and for whatever reason, he convinced me to just stop being scared. I'd always wanted to do my weird version of a Dazed and Confused or Stand By Me, and that kind of just blossomed into the movie that we see today.
That's wild. And actually, you've made my week knowing that this is based on a true story. That's
Oh yeah. And more of the situations in it are real than I care to admit, including the stuff that happens at the police station with the story given by the sergeant and the mugshot and the pants fall. I was 16 and arrested, and that is a true story.
wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Um, honestly, it is so much fun, and I love the fact that it opens, practically opens with them sort of arguing about John Hughes. Um,
yeah,
it's like far more of them are against John Hughes than I expected them to be in this film.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
what is the significance of John Hughes and his legacy in your mind?
Well, for me, it was I couldn't figure it. The way I cracked the lead character, Simon, was that he had to be obsessed with the idea of making his life like the movies because he didn't like his life as it currently stands. And like I've been guilty of that multiple times in my life, but knowing that that leads to a dangerous place the more you try to make your life like the movies. And as soon as I figured that element out, and realizing that these would have been the first generation that grew up with, home cassettes and movies and stuff like that, they obviously would have kind of compared their lives to it. And what better comparison would have been than the John Hughes movies of the time that were showing these slices of life of what's supposed to be their teenagehood. And I'm a huge John Hughes fan, but obviously the cinephile in them would have to be like, no, but none of this was realistic. And it was important to me that the Simons part of it, yeah, because like that's not really what it's about. It's about the optimism that they're portraying and figuring stuff out. So it just became this cool dichotomy of them arguing about whether it's real or fake. I mean, there's always the classic, everyone knows the cliche for a teenage coming of age movie, you hire the 25-year-old and put them in teenager outfits. So for us, it was important, cast the 18-year-olds, make sure that they're talking about these things. It was fun to play around with what everyone knows and recognizes from a John Hughes movies, and this was kind of our loving homage to it, while the characters are also aware of him as well.
Now, with working with the young cast, like is that a genre that they even have an appreciation for or have even seen? Like, I mean, these films are now 40 years old.
They were given a long list of movies to watch beforehand, for sure. And it just so happened that Jalen, who plays the movie buff James, he watched the entire list. I was like, man, you only needed to watch like a couple. But but I think everyone understands what a coming of age is really about, and what kind of makes them timeless is the fact that you could kind of change the time zone, timelines, the religions, all of it can be anything. It's really just about discovery, self-discovery, and finding your place in the world. And I kind of came at a perfect time for me. I just turned 41 this year. I was starting to go through a bit of my midlife crisis, and it just so happened that I found that all the things that I was worried about in my 20s, oh, I'm still worried about. And that kind of gave me the freedom to be able to think that these teenagers would still be thinking about this. One of my greatest things I heard in one of our casting auditions was one of the guys said, "It sounds like you had a tape recorder in the room with me talking with my friends." I'm like, okay, we're on to something here. Like, and so that's it. That's kind of, I don't think they needed to know the movie specifically, but going back to that, but I think they knew what they're trying to get at.
You know, I'm glad you said that. I was just having this conversation with someone recently actually about how, a lot of the stories, you look back at them and we can say, "Oh, we should have known better. We should have done this differently or frame these stories." But the soul of these films, I mean, it's just they're almost timeless. I think I was saying, I think I was saying to someone, and I said, young, like if you're in your 20s, like when I was in my 20s, and now I'm closer to 50 than I am, than I am 20. That's for
Yeah.
darn sure. Um, you don't think adults know anything because they don't understand the way things are.
Mhm.
But now, when you're older, you realize you understand the through lines, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think you're better at hiding it.
That's a good
Like we're
point.
all, yeah, we're all still going through the same stuff. We're just better at swallowing it, I think, as you age.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's why the stories like this work. Now, um, I wanted to ask you about the dare to be great moment. Do,
Yep.
do you have a dare to be great moment that was for you growing up that you said, I need to do this? Or was this it? I mean, you said it was coming out of COVID, was making this film your dare to be great moment.
Yeah, you know what? This is probably the closest it gets to swinging for the fences on something that I had no idea if it would work in a genre that I don't have much like support in coming outside of it. Yeah, this might have been it. First, again, going back to my father, a 69-year-old man talking about things that he didn't get to do. I would have figured in my 20s, I'm like, oh, by the time I'm 69, I would have done everything. And to find out that that's not the case was certainly motivation to be like, I got to stop being scared and trying these things. Now, the interesting thing when I was talking to these teenagers, to all the cast about, like, what's something you've tried? And I was more interested in the ones that you crashed and burned. And
Mm.
and they actually were able to give me a lot more examples of those than the ones where it really worked out, which is even better because I think everyone recognizes or can relate to when you swing for the fences and you miss. There's a reason that we kept using, like even for Simon, I don't want to spoil it, but there's a scene where Simon pulls out, tries to do a musical number, and I was adamant that it had to go poorly because I've seen too many times of it working, and it was like, no, this has to be reality, has to be play a factor here, in that things don't always work out the way you planned. So I think the kid talking with them, it's like it was a lot easier to find examples in their real lives where it didn't work out. I'm like, use that. Every scene where things are going wrong, I'm like, use whatever that feeling was. That's what we're trying to find.
Well, and one of the things that Simon talks about these films being about the innocence of youth.
Mhm.
And I think that's really interesting because when we look at a lot of these films too, they're usually about films, or they're usually about youth that are getting into trouble.
Mhm.
And I was wondering in your mind, what is that line? Because I mean, certainly too, like there is an innocence to, like I see these things, and I that phrase hits. There
Mhm.
is something about the innocence of youth, but it is interesting that it seems always about these kids who are willing to break the rules in order to find what that means.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for us, we had to have a lot of conversations with Max, who plays Simon wonderfully, but it was like we have to be very careful that none of your decisions come from a place of malice or like it has to come from a pure place. And the best character example that we could find that made the most sense was Michael Scott from The Office, because that the first season and a half, a lot of his decisions making were like always from jealousy, like anger, all these things, and then they tweaked the character to make him more likable. But it's like all of his decisions just came from either complete naivety or number two, the motivation was wanting love. And as soon as we kind of found that connection, we're like it was the same with Simon. We constantly had to remind ourselves, was that take too dark? Like we had to make sure that everything that he's doing, even if it's the wrong decision, I think audiences are on board if the motivations are correct. And everyone likes a little bit of troublemaking as long as as long as it's not from those negative places.
That's a great comparison. I had not thought of that because, yeah, I mean, Michael Scott from The Office is one of those guys who I think I've heard Steve Carell say if they were to remake The Office with his character, they couldn't do it now.
Mhm.
But you're right, there is such a, simple motivations that are easy to get behind. Like these kids, they're, mucking around in record stores and of course uh, t getting on the or using fake IDs and whatnot. But there's something about self-discovery that
Mhm.
is constantly going on in the midst of this that I think it works so well.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, they just between finding autonomy and who you are, there's a lot for them to chew on in those situations, whether they're making horrible decisions or not. But also as a youth, you don't understand consequences as well. I mean, there's a reason that I ended up in a police station at 16 is you don't consider the outcomes of your decision making sometimes, for better or worse. But that's why there is optimism. They don't necessarily see the negative sometimes.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. It's funny now that, I can't speak for you, but now that I'm on the other side of it, and I see these movies, I start thinking like I start seeing the parents, and I'm like, oh, maybe they're not that bad. But
Yeah,
but but at the time, when you're growing up, you're like, oh no, they are the enemy.
like
But
the worst.
they're
Yeah,
the worst. Uh,
yeah.
and
We had a funny conversation with Mark McKinney, who played the bishop in the opening of the movie. He's like, now you hired me. How far do you want me to go with it? It's like, I want you to do the opposite. I want this as dry and as straightforward as you can. He's like, really? Why? I said, because boredom is death for these teenagers. Like a lack of personality, like any kind of personality is the opposite of what it's just yeah, it was like is very specific to be like for these teenagers for this life, boredom and simple is death. That's why they want out of this world. They want the adventure. Oh,
yeah, that I mean that hits that. Well, I mean that's Simon's total motivation too. Is like this is my last shot. You
mhm.
know, all
Yeah,
the fun is being. I can't play sports. All these things are getting pulled away from him.
yeah,
And certainly, yeah, that boredom is death. That's interesting because I guess, and again, it goes back to that innocence of youth. Like, what is the boundary between boredom and responsibility?
yeah,
And they just don't know. They just don't
yeah.
know.
Well, they're figuring it out because like I said, we're still all worrying about the same stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. I know you said it was based on somewhat of a true story, but
Mhm.
like crossing the border and all that stuff, was that part of the
That
story as
his
well?
was from, I believe his was from Toronto to Ottawa. I made it Syracuse to Ottawa just to give it a bit more fish out of water, but it's pretty close. Like the credit card fraud, all of that stuff was verbatim. Even chasing a girl only to find out that he mixed that got the signals wrong. Like between the two of us, this is basically a biopic. It's pretty on the nose.
Honestly, Rob, it is like I said, it's just pure joy.
Oh,
Like
thank you.
watching this, you can't help but fall. The kids are great. Like,
Thank you.
they're
Yeah.
a lot of times, when you see young performers, sometimes they can be wooden or, feel like, but they just feel natural. Well, I don't want to say innocence because we've said that word a lot, but a purity
Yeah.
to this film.
Yeah.
What do
I
you hope that audiences take away from This Too Shall Pass?
I mean, like I said, when I was writing this mid-COVID, it kind of pulled me out of like a darker time period and reminded me of all the good in the world. And no matter how bad things are, that too will pass. So I hope what audiences recognize of it is just that there is a celebration of life in it, in an adventure that we're all trying to strive for. I mean, one they have conversations about who they want to be as adults, and one of them gets told that they were going to become a lemonade bender, but a lemonade vendor by a high school aptitude test. I want everyone to know that that was what I actually got told by my compu science class in grade 12. And it's 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 just yeah, you just keep moving forward. It's got some optimism to it that I perhaps needed in my life, and I hope other people do as well.
I really appreciate that. Honestly, Rob, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
I really
The film
appreciate
is
you.
so great.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Take care.
Thanks.